Hello humans, today I'll be breaking down one of my favorite but cancerous speed kills I did a month ago, the 2.4 second hard mode Helwyr. I will be going into the thought process and strategies of it all. Welcome to the mind of a speed killer. Hard mode Helwyr has a total of 300,000 life points, and with the aim of killing the boss in 2.4 seconds, this only leaves me with enough time to use two abilities. But two abilities by themselves won't do nearly enough damage, at least not without some sort of boosts and tactics. So I'll start off by explaining all the buffs and items I used during the kill and how they are used in the setup, as well as a few cool interactions I found along the way. So let's get started. Firstly, for my gear I have an unaugmented T85 Ling main hand and my T95 offhand. These will be used for stacking my weapon's passive effect, Primordial Ice. This allows me to do more damage with the special attack during the fight. Both of these weapons won't be perked with Aftershock, preventing the perk's timer from triggering somewhere during the build. This is so I can time the perk to land on Helwyr, allowing me to squeeze in a little more damage that I need. I explain how this is done further into the video. My T95 Ling, on the other hand, is perked with Aftershock and will be the weapon of choice I use to kill Helwyr with. And with Lings out of the way brings us to the next set of items, Dragon Weaponry. The Dragon Scimitar is used to increase my accuracy by 25% for 1 minute as long as I'm using a slash weapon. This will come in handy due to Helwyr having a high defense level in hard mode. Next, the Dragon Battle Axe, which will essentially drain my combat stats, boosting my strength levels depending on the amount drained in the process. This is why I use Super War Master and Extreme Necromancy Potion to ensure I get the highest stat boost before my stats are drained. Alongside this boost, the Dragon Battle Axe increases melee damage by 20%, stacking multiplicatively with other boost. 300k life points is no joke, but with the help of pocket slot items we are one step closer to making history. My pocket slot items of choice are Jazz, Berserk Blood Essence, and Grimoire. Scripture of Jazz is an item that has a 6.6% chance of being activated per hit splat dealt. Once activated, for 10 seconds all damage from your abilities will be stored, and after this time period ends, 20% of the damage you've dealt will be reapplied to your current target. This allows me to get an extra 30,000 damage on Helwyr. I'll go into detail how this is done later. The Berserk Blood Essence is an item which upon activating can boost your strength and attack level up significantly for 20 seconds, allowing me to get up to 137 strength and 133 attack when accompanied by the potions and axe spoken about before. And last but not least, my Grimoire is used for a flat 12% critical chance, overall helping with a highly crit dependent rotation. By the way, the first two pocket slot items I've mentioned earlier can be swapped once activated, essentially allowing me to benefit from all three items at once. Now I'll go over the purpose of each Essence of Finality that I will be using during this kill, but first let's go over the item itself. The Essence of Finality is an item which allows you to store a weapon's special attack inside of the necklace. This can be very useful because RuneScape has a lot of lower tier weapons with great special attacks, but due to power creep, those items aren't as handy as they once were. Thankfully now with the EOF, you can use those special attacks with the strongest weapons equipped. Now to look over my special attacks. Starting off is my green EOF. Inside is an Annihilation which gives an increase of 1% damage for every hit splat dealt, capping at a total of 20%. This buff is lost if you swap from the main hand weapon you casted it with. Keep note of this for later. My purple EOF contains a Dragon Halberd, a special attack which hits multiple enemies in front of you twice. This will be used to activate my Jazz book on a stack of mobs during the build. Inside of the blue EOF is none other than the legendary Dragon Claws, a high-hitting spec weapon that hits 4 times, each hit having the chance to crit, which will generate up to 64% adren with the build I use. And in my pink EOF is the secret sauce, the Granite Maul, which deals one high melee hit at the cost of 50% adrenaline. But the reason this special attack is so special is it doesn't occur global cooldown and can be used at any point in time. This means as long as I have the adrenaline to do so, I can spam as many Granite Mauls as I'd like. The Ring of Vigor passive I've unlocked allows me to save 10% adrenaline from the original cost of a spec weapon, so the Dragon Claws and Granite Mauls that require 50% adrenaline only end up costing 45%. I also swapped to an Asylum Surgeon's Ring during my Dragon Claw stall. Similar to the Ring of Vigor, this item has 40% chance of saving 25% of a spec weapon's adrenaline cost, making the times I don't crit enough slightly less forgiving. Now I'll be going over some essentials and a few switches that made it all possible. Now for the gear and weapons I'll be using. During the kill for armor, I have my 4-piece vestment set that gives me 2 important buffs. It will extend my Berserk ultimate by 6 seconds and increase my maximum adrenaline by 20%. This with the heightened senses relic allows me to have a total of 130% adrenaline. As you can see, I bring a wyvern crossbow, but any 2-handed range weapon will work. This is so I can stall and release Incendiary on a dummy before the fight to benefit from its crit buff. Incendiary makes it so every time I crit, I receive 8% adrenaline, and with Natural Instinct being used in the build, this 8% becomes 16%. An important weapon I'll be using is the Calphite Defender. Although it's a T90 weapon with reduced stats, it offers the ability to use defensives without using a shield. This paired with the Revenge ability will offer more damage than as if I was wearing a T95. For gloves, I have Cinderbanes. These come with a passive effect that applies poison at a 12.5% chance. But if the target is already poisoned, the gloves add another 12.5% chance to deal an extra hit. This extra hit can do the same and so on, but because I'm pre-poisoning using a bomb, I will benefit from the additional effect quite consistently. These will only be used for the first part of the rotation and swapped for Gloves of Passage later. Gloves of Passage have an effect. After using Havoc, for 6 seconds your next hit will deal 10% additional damage. But because I use multiple Granite Mauls all within the same tick, all of them will be granted the 10% bonus damage. My Ring of Death serves as a safety net in case I fail the portion of the build where I kill a stack of mobs on low HP. This just helps me save on death costs. The ring also gives a chance at receiving adrenaline when killing monsters, which helps ensure I cap out on Adren. For my other ring switch is a Reaver's Ring. The Reaver Ring offers 5% crit chance when worn. I equip this after swapping to my Asylum Surgeon Ring. And lastly, a Grasping Rune Pouch for Smoke Cloud runes to release a stall on a different target, as well as runes for a Prism of Loyalty to drain my health before starting. Finally, for the last few extra items before getting into how it's done. An Invention Dummy is dropped inside of the instance that allows me to use Chaos Roar followed with a stalled Dragon Claws. This is placed under Helwyr. A Super Adrenaline Potion that will give me 30% adrenaline is used during the kill, as well as a Vuln Bomb to deal 10% more damage. I bring my Poison Bombs and Weapon Poison to ensure the boss takes an increased poison hit, and a Power Burst of Acceleration to remove the cooldown from movement abilities. This is needed if I want to do the rotation how I plan to. A Ripper Demon is used for its damage improving passive, but also its special attack. Normally it's very unlikely to have the hit land on the boss, but I've discovered a way to have its attack always land. And finally my Arcane Spirit Shield, which allows me to use Dive instead of Bladed Dive while maintaining the Revenge and Annihilation buff. I'll explain why this is so important in a second. We finally made it to the part of the video where I'll be discussing the breakdown of cool strategies and the rotation. You may have noticed during the video I've said to remember a few things that will be important for later. This is because they require a little more attention due to their deeper intricacies. So let's start from the beginning. The inspiration behind this kill all started with my Invention Dummy. I realized in the God Wars Dungeon 2 speed kills I've watched, a dummy was always placed when first traversing into the arena. But what would happen if I dropped one next to the boss? Since the Leng special attack I'll be using has the area of effect, when I use it on Helwyr it allows me to deal an extra hit on the nearby dummy, potentially giving me another crit, which is a free 16% adrenaline. But there's one slight problem. The only way to reach the spawn point and drop a dummy in time while still performing the rotation as needed is to dive instead of Bladed Dive. With the recent combat changes released into the game, a change was made that caused normal dive and surge to no longer occur a global cooldown. This means I can dive and surge to the middle and still use an ability all at once. This will be crucial for hitting Helwyr as soon as he spawns, since there is only enough time to use 2 abilities before he loads into the game, with dive being an exception. Now in order to dive instead of Bladed Dive, I need to remove either my main hand or offhand. But by removing my main hand, I lose my Annihilation buff, and taking off my Defender will lose my Revenge buff. So then I found that by equipping a shield, I maintain my Revenge buff while having access to Dive. And with that finally out the way, we can focus on prepping the minion lore. In RuneScape, the maximum amount of targets that can be hit by a Dragon Halberd is 10. So before doing an attempt, I lure a pile of 20 monsters beside the barrier. This is so I can stack up my Jazz, as well as my other buffs. Jazz has a 6.6% chance of activating per hit, but because my Dragon Halberd hits twice, I get a total of 20 hits, which is about a 74% chance that my book activates. And then a tick later, I use another dragon halberd on the other 10 monsters to store damage in my already activated jazz. Doing so also gives me a fully stacked annihilation, and because my defender is perked with Ruthless 3, I get a 7.5% damage buff for the targets I've killed. Prior to this, I use Revenge at War's Retreat, which increases my damage dealt by 5% per hit I receive, stacking up to 10 times. And because I have so many monsters sitting outside of the portal, the moment I teleport inside, I'm hit 10 plus times, instantly capping my revenge. To ensure I don't die during the process, I use a barricade in the pre-build with a turtling 4 perk equipped and Malatops in my Anachronia farm. This extends my barricade timer, giving me just enough time I need to survive and do everything right, allowing me to utilize my Berserker's Fury relic, giving me another 5.5% damage buff. But with all these damage buffs, the kill is still pretty unlikely, so I looked for more. And then came the Ripper Demon. Ripper Demons have an attack rate of 3.6 seconds. This is an issue since if I want to make use of its special attack, it needs to land within the 2.4 seconds of the kill. But I discovered that the Ripper's attack speed can be reduced down to 1.8 seconds by summoning the familiar and special attacking as soon as possible. The earliest a familiar can spec is 1 tick after it's been summoned, resulting in a total of 2.4 seconds versus the original 3.6. Just what I needed to make it work. Because I'm using a Ripper Demon, I used my second account to give me the Calgarian Demon buff, giving me an additional 5% crit, as well as Ruby Aurora for another 3% damage. Now there's just one thing left that I wanted to incorporate during this kill, and that's Crackling and Aftershock. Crackling is a perk that can deal damage at 60-second time intervals. These time intervals are tracked by an internal clock that continues to tick behind the scenes. But by unequipping your gear with Crackling and Aftershock, then relogging, this restarts and pauses the timer, and will begin once re-equipping and dealing damage. This allows you to have control of the timing and to make the hits land on tick with the time the boss spawns. Because my pre-build takes me 47 seconds, I have to wait 13 seconds after triggering the 60-second timer. This aligns my perks to land when Helwyr spawns. Now that I've covered everything that happens prior to tagging Helwyr, here's a visual of what will be used in the killing blow. It starts off by releasing my stalled Dragon Claws. This doesn't occur a global cooldown, allowing me to follow up with 2 Granite Mauls, my Ling special attack, and another Granite Maul. After my Ling, I must wait 1.8 seconds before using any more abilities. During this time, I swap to my Havoc gloves. Shortly after, I use my Havoc ability, 1 Granite Maul with a sip of my Adrenaline Potion, and 2 more Granite Mauls, all within the same tick. Now, because each Granite Maul is worth 45%, a rotation like this can only work if I get a lot of crits. Each crit gives me back a 16% Adrenaline refund. This is what allows me to use so many Mauls. It's worth mentioning that my Poison, Aftershock, Crackling, and Jazz are all timed to land during this time period as well. So there we have it. Now that everything's in place, all that's left is for the stars to align. And here's what that looks like.